Well, I thought I would do something a little different this morning. You know, everybody's always so interested in where they can go to see sites like I visit out in the field. And most of those sites we keep really, really private or secretive just because they can become tainted by people coming in large groves or coming to poach plants. And so there are a few public places that are well known that you can come and check out some pitcher plants, some of these longleaf pine savannas like this, and some really charismatic wildlife as well. There's actually Mississippi Sandhill cranes, a critically endangered subspecies of the sandhill crane that breed here. And this is the Mississippi Sandhill Crane Refuge. So I thought I would take you all through a walk here. They do a lot of wonderful work here. The Mississippi Sandhill Crane only nests in longleaf pine savannas like this. And so I thought I would give a short tour, that way you all could check out this video. Maybe you can plan to come and check it out at some point. You can pause this and read the informational as you walk in here. So I'm gonna go on and head down this road. They have a parking lot way in the back, a really nice walking trail. It butts up against the water. You see the longleaf pine savanna. You can see some carnivorous plants up close right along the trail, as well as many other cool plants. So let's go check it out. Okay, so as you park here in the back at the visitor center, you walk up to the start of this CLD's wildlife trail. I really commend all the information that they put on this trail all the way throughout. The mark of a really, really nice wildlife trail is information and education being presented. And so I think I'll just let this roll throughout the entire walk rather than chop it up. It looks like there may be a small birding or naturalist group out here today. Maybe I'll get a moment to talk to them. This truly is one of the more nicely managed trails that I've been to here. So they've got a lot of little boards to point out the plants along the trail. If you maybe aren't coming out here with prior knowledge, or like me, you know, I kind of specialize in a certain genera. And so there's a lot of stuff that I miss out in the habitats I walk. I believe that's a nettle of some sort. You don't really want to touch that too much. Oh, this is just perfect. You can't ask for better placement. A white colic root. I run up on a lot of the orange species out in these bogs that I walk naturally. I don't see these white ones very often, so that's really nice. You can see them just poking out above everything else, like little beacons. So I did come out here with a specific intent for a couple species that I'd love to find. There's a pinguicula out here that I didn't realize was even found here. Lutea I've seen out here in some of the bogs, but apparently there's a population of primuliflora as well, which is somewhat uncommon in Mississippi. Not only that, there was a utricularia observation on iNaturalist nearby, which would be a really nice find. Some really nice prairie phlox here. The fact that people would rather plant some gaudy Lowe's or Home Depot plants in their garden rather than find some natives like these, I've seen plenty of phlox in cultivation. Some beautiful blazing stars out here, liatris. I've been out here a handful of times. I haven't gotten lucky enough to be out here and see any Mississippi Sandhill cranes, but I'm also typically not here during prime time. Unfortunately, live oaks get a lot of love here in the South, but longleaf pines are sort of hated. And I mean, I get it, these these live oaks are truly gorgeous, especially as they sprawl through the savanna like this, but something about these longleaf pines just captivate me. Is this a little sensitive briar? Yeah, here we have a mimosa species. Maybe Nutalii, or I'm not sure. I believe we're rounding up here on the first section of bog that butts up against the trail. Here's a really neat example of longleaf pine just coming out of the grass stage. You know, for many years, they'll just barely poke above the ground and look like a bunch grass. And then they'll slowly grow up as one shoot, sometimes really, really lanky, and then they'll only branch out once they've hit, 15 plus feet or so. Sometimes I feel like I don't research every single thing until I come out here, and I'm feeling lost, but part of this is the education that I love. So if I misidentify or put some information out there that's a little bit incorrect about a plant that you love, jump in the comments, let me know. Some of the best conversations I've had with other plant people and wildlife people are when they're correcting me on something, or I go to correct them on something slightly that they said. Here we've got a little bog Cheetos. And here we go, the first Sarracenia alata. Some really nice ones. Just right along the trail here. In previous years when I've been here, you can find some really tiny seedlings germinating just right along the edges of the trail here. So we'll keep an eye out. That one's got a nice lid. I'm also going to go ahead and say that I'm sorry for any poor focusing. Sometimes I get so caught up in looking at the plant from my own eyes that I forget I'm trying to show you through your eyes. So excuse me if I get a little obsessed. Here we go. Here's some tiny little seedlings germinating along the trail. I'm realizing I will have to pause the video at some point when I start to try to track down that Utricularia species, but I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I hope I don't interrupt this group's little hike today. Got some toothache grass. This trail really gives you the opportunity to walk directly through a longleaf pine savanna that is pristine and chock full of life without having to worry about stepping on things or going places you're not supposed to be. Unfortunately, so many of the little remnant savannas I visit are either locked away deep in trails in national forest or on private property. And it does make it difficult for the average person to just get a chance to get out and see some in nature. But luckily, some spots like this exist. We're starting to get into the really dense allotted population. Nice Seneca. Just all along this section of trail here. And they've got a nice plaque. Now, if you've seen another somewhat local site, Buttercup Flats, this can look a little bit underwhelming. Buttercup Flats is just a sight to behold, similar to Splinter Hill with Leucophylla over in Alabama, but nonetheless, this is a beautiful site and just something that I wish more people got to see. So if you're ever down here, come over the Ocean Springs area and visit the Mississippi Sandhill Crane Refuge. Now that's just a beautiful, huge lid. Without going off trail too far, that is a large lid on that allada. Something that everybody who takes a trip to the Gulf Coast should come and see. Got some small Sweet Bay magnolia here. Now I know in the past there have been some pinguicula around this area. A lot of this pine savanna is off limits to foot travel. I'm sort of weary to push these smaller offshoots of the trail. I really like to respect these sites that they work so hard to maintain and provide to the public. But they also tend to be a little more understanding of true botany nerds, so maybe after a short conversation. Here we also have some Psittacina right on the trail. I'd be willing to bet that most people pass these guys up when they come out here, unless they see the plaque or if they're in perfect mid-bloom, which now is still pretty good time for Psittacina. But they can be a tough spot. Oh, here we have a small Utricularia subulata, or the zigzag butterwort, which also alerted me to the presence of Drosera capillaris. Now I know there's also Tracei right around here. We got a nice patch of Psittacina here. Now I've never seen a hybrid Gordonii here at the Sandhill Crane Refuge, but maybe when we get that to change. There's a small Pogonia blooming down here amongst the weeds. Some foxtail club moss. I've actually managed to propagate a really small piece of that into a bog at home. There's also staghorn club moss, which I would love to try to propagate at some point. Haven't seen that in situ. Okay, here we go. Here's some yellow colic root. And that's more typical of what I see when I'm out. Really nice to be able to see both. There's also some Plantanthera nivea, I believe, is the white snowy orchid in this area, which I would love to see. It's not really the right time for them to be blooming, but nice plaque for the Seneca lutea. There's a really cool plaque up here for the carnivorous plants. This site is also decent for some Pinguicula lutea, although I can't guarantee I'll be lucky enough to find any right along the front of the trail here. They do have this section closed off. A really nice, weird population of these pointy, droopy hoods here. There's so many of them. Another really nice little patch. This would be a good spot to find some Pinguicula. So they have Pinguicula pumila listed on this. That would be pretty far from its range as far as I understand it. So that's something I would love to get some permission to come look for, kind of out deeper, or maybe just ask around and see if maybe they are around here. Here's the Pinguicula lutea sign. Maybe I should spend a little time right here looking. The utricularia I'm hoping to find today is, if it is the species that I'm believing it to be, is also quite far from its current range and would be pushing its current accepted range further west. This would be the only known population in Mississippi. So here's to hoping, I guess, that we can get lucky. I finally met a few people online associated with the Mississippi Museum of Natural Sciences. So perhaps if it is what I believe it to be, we can get a collection into the herbarium. As you can see, a really beautiful little landscape down that way as well. It does appear that my hunt for Pinguicula primuliflora may end uneventfully due to a bunch of sections of this being closed to the public, but I can't even be mad at it to protect what this place has. One of my absolute favorite trees down here in our landscapes, the bald cypress, along the edges there. Maybe some pond cypress as well. This is just beautiful. A very well placed bench. And I think I'm going to have to pause the video here for a little bit while I try to track down some of these target species, but we'll pick back up. Well, down here, right along the water's edge actually, or sort of a really swampy intertidal zone, there are not only some Sarracenia alata down here, but some Pinguicula primuliflora. That's the only clump I've noticed so far, although I doubt that's the only one here. Yeah, here we go. So I'm going to pause the video to get some photos, and we'll check back in here in a moment. So just a little ways down, I found a little bit more Pinguicula with very pale flowers in this area. I mean, I've seen plenty of photos of these pale flower primuliflora, but I haven't seen one up close. But I really wanted to show off this absolutely monster Pogonia. This thing is enormous. There's a few other somewhat large ones there, but this habitat here is also crazy. Some insanely tall Sarracenia alata over there. I would say that's 3.5 feet tall, right along the edges of a waterway, which I would assume would be too full of nutrients. But I suppose not. They're doing all right. That guy there looks interesting. I'm not sure what that was before he got munched on. There's some hibiscus, I believe pineland hibiscus, growing down here. Won't bloom here for a while, but I guess I'll head up back to the marked trail here a few feet away now that I got some Primula flora photos, and we'll continue on with the video. Now those pinguicula flowers looked really small and pale and had me sort of hoping in a way that they were pumila, but I haven't seen any pumila in person. I don't really know, and I would say it's much more likely that it is the species documented here quite heavily, Primula flora. But I always get a little excited anytime I see something out of the usual. Now, unfortunately, like I thought, that is sort of the exact area I need to be to look for this Utricularia species that I was hoping to find, which is unfortunate, but again, I can never blame these reserves and these refuge to refuse people back in certain areas. That's how you protect the wildlife. So maybe I can make some connections and get some permission to come out here and look and see if we can push that boundary or the range of this species a little further than previously thought, but who knows. I do have a kayak, and this does range further than the refuge. Perhaps I could kayak in and we could take a look. I'm gonna have to pause the video again, take some photos here. I'd love to paint this. Just stunning. As we come up back into the sort of highland savanna up here, you start seeing a lot of the familiar grasses, and Some more prairie phlox and dollarweed. Another small patch of Sarracenia here. These small little ditches through the savannas are oftentimes a good place to look for pinguicula, sundews, even Sarracenia psittacina. Really loves those conditions. As you can see, this is a sort of low-lying point, and so it holds water a little better than some of the other areas. There are many species of blueberry out here in the southeast. Even specifically in our area, we have more than I can even recall. Elliott's blueberry is going to be one of the more common. We've got many little huckleberries. I thought that I heard somebody. Here we have a little milkweed blooming. Milkweed have some of the coolest flower structures in my opinion. Now I'm not sure which one this is. I've been wanting to dive deeper into the different milkweeds, but there's so many of them, to be frank. We've got a little cool microhabitat here, some more Sarracenia down there. I have to assume some more pinguicula. We're coming up on another marsh. Oh, here we got some Seneganana. Sometimes called sand Cheetos. Just to go with the bog Cheetos, I suppose. Well, I see no sign here. And there very well could be some Utricularia. Really nice Drosera down there. As you can see, some Sarracenia alata growing right along the edges of this bank, which again is not something I would have assumed possible. We've got some Nymphaea up here, some lily pads. Sarracenia and lily pads growing out of the same water source. Some more rose begonias. Some more really large rose begonias, might I add. Just insane. We've got Nymphaea and Sarracenia blooming out of the same water source as well. Absolutely insane habitat. I don't see any more Pinguicula over in this area. At least not yet. If I remember right, there were some Psittacina right around here as well. Very large patch of begonia coming up. That's really nice. Here we've got a super tiny little Sarracenia alata. Here go a ton of begonias. Gotta pick your steps very carefully in these habitats. Some seedling cypress down here. They've got a really nice little boardwalk. More Sarracenia growing directly out of this water's edge. In these areas, you'll see a lot of these green tree frogs clinging to the grasses during the day. Won't take me very long of looking to find another. You can see another alata out there. And the reason that I find it so surprising to see the alata growing out of the banks here is this water is connected to the Gulf of Mexico not too far from here. And so I'm not sure of the exact salinity, but I would have assumed it was far greater than what Sarracenia could handle. More pogonia over here. I don't know if I've just only ever seen really small pogonias. Am I tripping, or are these quite large? I mean, that's over a foot long or a foot tall plant. Well, we're coming out here to the entrance. This little naturalist group is having a little picnic. Maybe we'll get to nerd out for a moment, or maybe they'll be a little busy, but I can't recommend this trail enough for anybody wanting to get out and see some of these habitats. I think, given that I have enough time this morning still, I may make a brief trip over to the Alabama-Mississippi border, and maybe we'll check out a hybrid swarm of leucophylla and alata, and you'll be able to compare that to the hybrid swarm I recently filmed at Washington County, Alabama. So I guess if I check in over at that swarm, you'll see me. Otherwise, I'm going to end the video here. Like I said, come give this spot a check. It's the Mississippi Sandhill Crane Refuge here near Gautier, Ocean Springs area. So come check it out.